What is good? Osiris here. Thanks for joining. Let's take a trip across the pond. Who is Marine Le Pen? Marine Le Pen. I try to do a French accent. I'm very bad at that. Let's go to France. Who is Marine Le Pen and what are her policies? And why am I going to talk about her? I'm in America. I don't know the politics of France. I'm just reading about it. If you're new to the channel, I'm just a dude in my basement reading stuff. I'm not any type of expert. Like, we can just have conversation. The leader of the national rally has stopped focusing on Eurosceptic anti-immigrant rhetoric and has shot up the polls as a result. So we've got some key words here. National rally. We're talking about nationalism. Talk about that on the channel a lot. I would consider myself a nationalist. Has a bad connotation, doesn't it? It's almost like the word racist nowadays. All it means is your country first. Nothing against any other country. You don't wish anything bad for common citizens of other countries. It's just the priorities of my family and my neighbors and my citizens come before anybody else's. Is that such a radical idea? So nationalism, then you got Eurosceptic. This is the idea of saying, hey, how close should Europe and Britain be tied together? Eurosceptic means we should separate, kind of like Brexit. That's how they're using the term here. Anti-immigrant rhetoric. We hear that in the States all the time. If you are for making sure that anyone who comes across the border, my parents are immigrants as well, legal citizens. If you're for making sure that anyone comes across the border goes through the process to become a legal citizen, you are now considered anti-immigrant in America. So I don't look at this stuff in France and think, oh, Marine Le Pen is some crazy wackadoo psycho. I'm not condoning her. I'm not endorsing her. I don't know her well enough. I'm just interested enough to read this article by Henry Samuel of The Telegraph. Fighting her third presidential campaign since clawing the leadership of the National Front Party from her father in 2011, Marine Le Pen is firm favorite to reach the second round. French presidential runoff for a rematch against Emmanuel Macron. Our good friend of show, meaning not friend of show, Emmanuel Macron. Yeah, Emmanuel Macron. So you wonder why she's climbing up in the polls. Like, it wasn't that. I know they want to memory hole this stuff, but it wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago where France's Emmanuel Macron sparks outrage as he vows to annoy the unvaccinated. That sounds evil, doesn't it? Why would I vote for somebody who would do that? Why would I vote for somebody who out in the open wants to ostracize fellow citizens from each other? His comments coincided. This was back in this was back, actually, I thought it was late last year, but this article from 2022. Man, that's just like a couple months ago. And it's like, I already memory hold it. He got criticized for it. Here's what he said. He said, well, they're the unvaccinated. I really want to hassle them. And so we will continue to do it until the end. These people have no problem just flat out telling you how they feel. You just have to listen. They do not care. Crazy ass moments in French politics talked about that crazy quote. We had quotes like that here in America too. When you look at it, Macron actually seems like he's getting pressure from this nationalist candidate and actually was criticizing Biden. This is from March 27th. Breaking. Macron is criticizing Biden for calling Putin, quote, a butcher. The French president says it's not constructive. That sounds like me. I would not use that kind of language. If a ceasefire is to be brokered, we must not escalate, neither through words nor actions. That's why I'm for. I don't know Marine Le Pen. I'm not endorsing her. But when you have healthy competition, it forces politicians to meld and mold and evolve. He's seen pressure from her. She's saying these type of things, Le Pen. So he doesn't want to look like he doesn't want to look like the radical. So he's kind of coming back to the middle a little bit. So I like that from what I'm seeing as far as healthy competition, forcing a politician to be more reasonable. Without that healthy competition, there would be less likely for that to happen. To get to this point, her campaign has honed in on one central pledge: to put more money in French pockets amid fears of inflation and rising living costs linked to the war in Ukraine. And my interpretation is not through like welfare. She's looking to cut the taxes. They talked about the VAT tax. I'll go to that real quick and see if I can find that. If elected, she pledges to scrap income tax for those aged under 30, to cut VAT on energy from 20% to 5.5%, and to zero for essential products such as pasta and nappies, diapers, as long as the inflation is 1 point higher than growth. So she's got policies to say, let's cut back the government. So when she says put more money in pockets, that doesn't mean causing more inflation necessarily. To me, I see government getting out of the way, and I'm all for that. I don't know about this income tax for only under 30. I don't like age determinate laws like that, but it's a start. We'll see how that. I don't know their culture over there. She has pledged no employer contributions on pay raises of up to 10% and early retirement at 60 for those who have worked 40 years. Well, that's not a huge radical position, as well as a rise in basic pensions. Do they still have pension? Because here in America, we have gone from, this is the industry I used to work in. I used to be an actuarial analyst. Never became an actuary, but you had to pass exams to be an actuary. I'm out of that business now, but we would consult with companies, and a lot of companies back in the day, if you're of the senior class, is that nice? No. If you're an old guy like me, let's just put it like that, you remember defined benefit pension plans. Meaning if you worked for Ford, for example, you had, maybe they still do, I think the teachers still have it, the teachers union. But if you worked for a company, you didn't have to put any money aside. They put money aside in a trust fund for you to have when you retired, and you would get your $600,000, depending on your years of service, your salary, you would get your $1,200 a month just from your defined benefit pension, and you didn't have to put any money away. But then we had the crash of 2008 under Obama. Well, Obama came in after and bailed out the big banks. After that, they're like, there's too much risk. We need the employees to take this ownership. So you put your money away in defined contribution. I'm on a tangent now, but 401k, where you put money away, maybe your employer will match some. And I'm not a financial advisor, but if you are not putting in enough money to get a match from your employer, you're doing something wrong, in my opinion, unless you really need that money to eat. If you need that money to eat, then you probably should cut back on other things. But I digress. I don't know what they meant by pension there. That's because we don't really have pensions anymore. When you put money in your 401k, that's not a pension, that's your retirement. You're putting it away for retirement. You're taking the risk. As you can see the environment in the country, you can see the environment, in the world, you can see the environment with Brexit. You see the same type of thing. Who does this sound like? When I look at it and we talk about, a little bit more of why people like her. So the odds still stack up against her, against Le Pen. Her gradual rise has sent jitters through the Macron camp. And this is what somebody in a cabinet member said: we cannot rule out the possibility of a democratic accident. What is that? What is a democratic accident, bruh, or lady, or miss? The same type of energy against Trump, same energy against her. It's the same. The whole globe is going towards this globalism, this cabalism, this corporatism, because there is a rise in populism all over the world. It's not just Trump. So that's why you're seeing a lot of the same tactics, the same things. She's anti-immigration. She's a nationalist. The exact same thing. The former lawyer with a steely blue glare appears to have finally pulled off her long-haul drive to demonize Very similar to what Trump right now is just embracing it, which I think that's a fine strategy. You can't fight it here in America. But she's trying to demonize the party's toxic image after changing its name to the National Rally. All of this sounds very familiar. The French now see her as representing a patriotic right attached to traditional values. She was able to rebrand herself. I don't see that's not even possible in America. I don't know how their media works, or maybe it is the same and she's just pulled off the impossible. I don't know, but there's no way that Trump could rebrand himself to America like this. But I still think most people, if given the choice, Biden or Trump, will just say, I'm going Trump. Biden is one of the worst presidents ever. But Trump wouldn't be able to rebrand himself as some patriotic right. But that's why they're so focused on the January 6th here. So it doesn't get rebranded to that. With only 40% over there harking from the racist and xenophobic far right, a 9% drop since 2019, trying to overcome the exact same things as Trump. She's within the margin of error. Probably seems like to me still a long shot, but it's possible when you're that close. People are getting scared over there. You would say the cabal is getting scared. She's trying to make herself more relatable, letting cameras into her home, talking about kittens. She doesn't want to come off as some lunatic radical. She did bad in a debate in 2017. I did not see that. I just read it. And they said that she's more prepared now, at least this article. And this article seems to be biased against her, in my opinion, to a certain extent. Doubters, including among her own camp, were initially worried that she faced elimination due to a split, with Mr. Zemmour, 63, insisting she cannot win. So they were going to split that nationalist angle. She contends that France will never elect a candidate as brutal and divisive as this Mr. Zemmour. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but so she had to fight her own battle there. Trump doesn't have that here. He's ruling it. DeSantis isn't even close unless something health-wise or something out of the ordinary happens to Trump. She produced a picture of herself with a Muslim teenager in a headscarf, saying that there was a chasm between fighting immigration and fighting immigrants, just as there was between respecting religious freedoms and tackling religious totalitarianism. So these are the ways that she was able to rebrand herself. So here's what my takeaway is. Why am I talking about this? I like some of the approaches that she's taking, pulling back the government in the time that's tough for common people. I think that's fine. You don't need to give people checks. Pull the government back. Pull the power back. Cut spending. What sacrifices is the government making during tough times while we know famine's coming? They're telling me this. WEF, Biden, they're the ones telling me that this stuff is happening. Even before the Russia-Ukraine thing, this stuff was escalating, inflation, all that kind of supply chain issues. So what sacrifice? I know you want us to make sacrifices. What sacrifices have y'all made? And when you cut back the amount that the government takes in, and hopefully they're going to also cut back spending and not put more in debt, because if you don't do that, this means nothing, then I can understand that. Like, because this is happening, we want to support, even if you want to make the argument, we want to support Ukraine, then okay, then what are you willing to sacrifice? Because you're spending money, you're sending the military over there. I'm looking at Biden, I'm looking at the establishment, neocons on the right, and then the fake populists and the establishment on the left. What are you sacrificing? It seemed like to me, everybody in the world, starting with the poorest people in Africa and throughout the world, Pakistan, everywhere, they're already suffering, riots starting up. They're already sacrificing. Now it's going to be the American people. What sacrifices are y'all making? And I think she's coming from that standpoint of, yeah, there is going to be some. She talked about with the welfare benefits, only citizens will have access to that. I need to hear that here too. I think it makes sense. I'll end with this. They said that Ms. Le Pen's electoral base is largely made up of young, less educated, and poorer voters who are less likely to turn out than the rump of Macron voters. So we make two things. It makes me wonder, is that why they hate her? If her base is made up of young, the future, less educated, and poor, we know that the elites, There's nothing more that they hate than less educated and poor thinking that they can run things through an elected official. So if maybe that's the reason why they hate her. I don't know. I want to educate myself and read more into it. I wonder if that's the reason. And I'm going to say, if you are one of those young, less educated and poor voters, you might need to make sure that your voice is heard right now. If you don't do that now, I don't know when you will. Let me know what you think. Take care.